Ladies and gentlemen, coming soon, a podcast you've all been waiting for. The movie podcast to end all movie podcasts. A podcast that discusses and critiques the best of the best and the worst of the worst movies playing at a theater near you. With a host whose opinions have been deemed as fact by your favorite fact checkers. And that's a fact. Without further ado, let me introduce you to the movie maestro, the tyrant of theater, the gumshoe of review, the man that makes theater employees and Hollywood execs shiver by his mere presence. Ladies and gentlemen, the judge, the jury, the sultan of cinema, Justin Henson. Welcome to the Movie Wire.
Welcome to this week's edition of The Movie Wire. I'm your host, Justin Henson, and welcome to the show. We have a fantastic show this week with 4 brand new reviews, 3 new in theaters, and 1 now available to stream. This week on the show, new Meg Old Chum in the sequel to the 2018 giant shark thriller in Meg to the Trench. The only constant in life is that he won't change. In the new comedy drama, Shortcomings. Nicolas Cage turns a car ride into a game of cat and mouse in the new thriller, Sympathy for the Devil. And finally, a theater camp must band together to keep it afloat in the new comedy, Theater Camp. We've got a lot of reviews to cover. Ready for my verdict? Let's get into it.
Out of the windows to watch a roar and a bursting of flames. The Movie Wire podcast. You need people like me.
The Wire.
And here we go.
A research team encounters multiple threats while exploring the depths of the ocean, including a mysterious mining operation. In the sequel to 2018's Meg comes Meg to the Trench.
Jonas, we need your help. We're detecting increased aquatic activity 25,000 feet deep in the trench. It's an ancient ecosystem untouched by man. Whatever is down there is trying to make its way to the surface.
This was a bad idea.
Just a little bit.
Jonas, we've got company.
That's the biggest Meg I've ever seen.
Biggest Meg anyone's ever seen.
That's the apex predator.
Everybody make it to the station! You can make it! Hit line!
3 massive Megs and who knows what else have escaped the breach.
I just hope it goes better than last time.
What happened last time?
You don't want to know.
This ain't the end. I saw you again.
Go! We've never seen this before. They hunted it back.
You can relax. This place, Meg-proof. I mean, Jonas was always afraid of this, but I was also thinking...
Now, what I'm about to say, I don't really say about many films. A lot of films, we can usually find something in the movie we can find memorable or enjoyable, even if it's for a sliver of a moment. And when it comes to Meg to the Trench, from the previews, I was looking forward to a good, fun, silly creature feature. Just like what we kind of got from the first movie. It succeeded in at least being an entertaining couple of hours. and it accomplished what it sought out to do, which is make a movie that was meant to entertain by just watching a massive shark kill people. And now when it comes to the sequel, audiences are assuming they know what they're getting into when they buy a ticket for Meg to the Trench. But I have to say, when it comes to Meg 2, I hated this movie to the point I would rather watch Sharknado on a continuous loop for the rest of eternity in my own personal hell than to endure the amount of dull, poorly acted, poorly written, lack of actual shark action mess of a movie that Meg 2 presents to us. Now, the Meg movies are based on a set of books by author Stephen Alton, this one included with the same title. Now, here's what the most frustrating and even to an extent the lazy piece of it is the mere fact this movie is an adaptation of the book. The story, the characters, shark action is already written. It's up to the screenwriters to just adapt the damn screenplay. And what writers John and Eric Hober and Dean Georgeras do with this is create one of the most laziest screenplays and one of the laziest piece of crap storytelling styles I have seen in a long time. Even when we look at a sci-fi original movie, this one falls below the mark of that. Now, John and Eric Hober are a 50-50 shot when it comes to their screenplays, with Red 1 and 2 being their best attempt, followed by a stream of just meh movies, with 2009's Whiteout, 2020's My Spy, The First Meg, and just the recent Transformers Rise of the Beast. Then we have Dean Georgeras, who is responsible for his most notable, The Manchurian Candidate, the original 2003 Lara Croft Cradle of Life, and The First Meg. Now, here's a thought that came across my mind that frightens me after leaving the movie, is how in the hell do you have the material already written and 3 actual writers attempt the adaptation and they still get everything completely wrong? And what the outcome is an abomination of writing. These are 3 writers that were responsible for the first Meg, so what in the hell happened? This almost feels like sabotage, or they were banking on the mere concept, the CGI, and the actors to really attempt to carry this film. Now, normally I don't nitpick the writing when it comes to a film like this because its sole mission is to entertain and just have a good time. But for a movie about not only one giant prehistoric shark, but they add 2 more to make 3, along with other prehistoric sea creatures we saw in the previews, this movie has little action during its way too long 2-hour runtime. And when we finally do get some action, this is where I will give the film some credit here. It is edge of your seat action, because you're on the edge of your seat wondering if you should just leave and never come back to revisit this movie. The action sequences are so uninspired, with no sense of style, and it really doesn't engage the audience or viewer into the action. It usually sticks to the same formula of showing nothing. When we really want to see something, it utilizes some really up-close shots or more shots on the characters versus our prehistoric creatures. Now, we have an attempt by director Ben Wheatley to create scenes of mystery, to kind of have that old formula thrill, the less is more, to add to that tension. But there is really nothing to leave to the imagination because we have seen this formula before. And this is where he makes a mistake. Instead of utilizing the environment to add to the thrill or the mystery or the tension, he switches to up-close shots of the characters. Having these up-close shots on a character does not add to the tension. By doing this, what Ben Wheatley actually does is show he doesn't know where his flaws are. He doesn't know where to utilize the camera or the shots. He doesn't have that experience with CGI to really utilize it. And we see multiple examples of this in the movie, because Ben Wheatley shows that his biggest flaw in this film is his eye for shots and his character direction. Now, it doesn't help director Wheatley that the character's dialogue is written horribly, but the performances are just plain bad. To the point that I can almost feel Wheatley's shoulders shrug and say, that's good enough. With the best example being Paige Kennedy, who plays DJ that some will remember from the first Meg. Kennedy has some extremely painful, awful dialogue, an even more cringy performance. And I know he is better than this because we have seen him perform before, and I started to see a pattern in Meg 2. We're even returning Jason Statham, who returns as Meg Hunter Jonas Taylor, who in no means is a thought-provoking actor, but at least he is pleasant and entertaining to see on screen. Here we see the struggle too next to Kennedy, where the dialogue is just so awfully bad and painful that even Statham struggles to deliver lines without having us roll our eyes. But this doesn't help Wheatley's character direction either because it is just so sloppy. Now, this doesn't point the finger to just one group, but multiple. From the writers to the character direction from Wheatley, the mere fundamentals of creating a movie that just involve a shark attacking everything with Jason Statham in it should be a pretty straightforward formula. And this just shows with how green Ben Wheatley is as a director, with nothing major under his belt, that this movie was such a basic concept to entertain, this was way over his head. Now, the first Meg was successful in at least the entertaining aspect, and this is mainly due to director John Turteltaub, who is responsible for 1992's Three Ninjas, While You Were Sleeping, Phenomenon, The Kid, and the National Treasure movies. He knows exactly what this concept was and how to have childlike fun with it, and he knew not to take it too seriously. This strategy was effective, and audiences got exactly what they bought a ticket for. Meg 2 director Ben Wheatley loses credibility with this film. It's a complete bait and switch. He is now the Amway of directors. Meg 2 literally drags its feet throughout the movie and gives us little to no creature action. For a minute, I forgot what movie I was seeing, and I could count the yawns from audience members in front of me. It tends to forget it's supposed to be a fun creature feature, and it's just boring. There is a lack of action when it comes to our creatures. And I can almost picture that the Sci-Fi Network probably turned them down because they said it looked too cheap and it was boring. At least sci-fi original movies or their creature features at least have a little bit of fun and entertainment value to them, even though horrible. And by the time we get to the climax, Meg 2 attempts and assumes that the viewer is just in love with these characters, to the point they think we actually care what's happening during the attempt at throwing everything it's got to make up for the lack of action. And by the time the last 15-20 minutes happen when we're getting into the climax, I even think I whispered out loud without meaning it while rolling my eyes that I don't care. Then I ended up looking at the time on my watch and doing the math in my head of when this movie was going to end, because a clock was more entertaining than what I was seeing on screen. And during the climax and its attempt at action, Meg 2 really pushes for the campy, ridiculous fun aspect, but compared to the rest of the movie, it's a drastic tonal change that doesn't transition well, where even to the point I was waiting and listening for a sitcom laugh track to come on in the background. There's a moment where we have Jason Statham look at the screen and say the one-liner, "See you later, chum," then kicking someone in the water to the shark to become actual shark chum. And even this one-liner, and don't get me wrong, I love my one-liners and I love them extremely dumb, but only in entertaining films. This one made me snap my head back and just go, ugh. Not only that, but we also have guns, knives, cars just appear, weapons just appear, boats just appear, convenient moments that don't make any sense. And this isn't in a good way that we tend to have fun with. And with these random placements of items just to make it convenient, I'm okay with that if it's meant to have some fun with it. But this movie doesn't even try. Sharknado 20 would have made more sense and have more fun with their movies than this one does. There is a difference in film when you're having fun with the content, the characters, and you're intending to have some fun with what you're actually putting on screen and presenting to the audience. But then you have a movie that just treats its viewer and audience like we're idiots. And this movie does that. Meg 2 The Trench is an absolute abomination of a movie, to the point I was kicking myself for going for the small bottle of water versus the big one, and I was hoping for a miracle to have to go pee at some point so I could have an excuse to leave the movie for just a mere 3 minutes to give myself a break. How do I summarize such a horrible movie like the Meg 2 The Trench? Let me break it down. The acting is awful, the action is awful, the dialogue is painfully awful, the pacing needs shock therapy. The CGI is so bad I would have been happier seeing a version of the Muppets take on this sequel of The Meg instead of what we got. I'm giving The Meg 2 The Trench half a star. The eccentric staff of a rundown theater camp in upstate New York must band together with the beloved founder's broy son to keep the camp afloat. In the new comedy, Theater Camp.
What up, Adirondacks? Listen up. Squad, gang, maybe zip it. Can we just get you guys to shit?
Oh, what a beautiful morning.
Dope. That was dope.
Welcome, auditioners.
You guys are so talented, so unbelievable. This will break you. This will fully destroy you.
Congratulations on being the most talented kids at camp.
Starfish, starfish, jiggle like a jackal, jiggle like a jackal. These are the things we can do with masks.
These people are really weird. That's a good song choice for her. I do believe her as a French prostitute.
Amos.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sex worker.
Thank you.
Sad news, I will not be doing piercings anymore in the hut because there's a narc amongst us. Cassie has narked. It's totally fine.
We're going to need to prioritize the musicals, which means the straight plays are going to have to be acoustic.
Quick question, what's a straight play?
There are musicals and then there are straight plays.
So then what would be a gay play?
I guess a musical.
Oh, cool.
I know this one's a theater camp classic, so send our regards to Broadway.
We only have 3 weeks to create a masterpiece. It's on you now. All on you.
Let's do this. And cue cocaine.
You need to know that only 3% of people make it. The rest end up in a mental facility or on a go-go box in Hell's Kitchen.
This is a complete disaster.
Everything is gonna be okay.
It doesn't look okay.
We're theater people. We know how to turn cardboard into gold.
You think this is fun and games?
It's not fun. It's art.
Minor housekeeping issue. Whoever stole my CBD gummies, please return them. I'm pretty sure I know who it was.
Theater camp tries so hard to be a hidden gem like we saw from Christopher Guest films like Waiting for Guffman, A Mighty Wind, and Best in Show, with a mix of wet, hot American summer and, dare I say, a small hint of Ernest Goes to Camp. But it attempts this at a contemporary style and with a different point of view. Now, with Christopher Guest films, they all do have something in common. They are true comedic gems that brought a unique, subtle comedy with unique, funny, and strong performances and memorable characters. And Theater Camp, I do have to give some credit. It tries so hard to be one of these hidden comedic gems that its desperation of this really shines through to the viewer to be too obvious and gives us characters that we see out of other generic comedy movies, but with a tone that feels like it's another episode of The Office or Parks and Rec. It's almost like this movie is at an audition itself and is trying to win over the judges. And this might be the intent of the filmmakers, but it gets lost in translation. Now, this does not mean it's a bad thing necessarily. Compared to most of the comedies that have been released in the last couple of years to the last few years, I do have to give it some credit for at least attempting to go back to theatrical and comedy basics, with a modest budget and a modest cast that really relies solely on the situations and the characters. But does that mean that it always works out in the film's favor? Absolutely not, because the movie tends to really run out of steam in the second half and starts to typecast itself around some generic situations and characters that we really don't need in the movie to keep it alive. The first half of the film introduces us to some really fun characters and places them in situations that not only feel realistic, but the adult cast interacts with each other extremely well. But what we could have used more from is our kids, our theatrical kids that inhabit the camp. This is a missed opportunity for some true comedic gold, where we have a camp full of these theater or drama kids that hint around some truly funny moments, but it really never goes past the finish line. The movie sets a laser focus on our adult talents, especially our main theater teachers, Amos and Rebecca, played by up-and-coming Ben Platt and Molly Gordon, who, don't get me wrong, have some strong moments, but they fall into the trap of running out of speed in the second half. It would have been much wiser to have our kids fill in some of these gaps to give the focuses on our adults a little bit of a break. Now, the film centers around Troy, who has no experience running a camp, nor is he a theater type of guy, but rather more of a social media influencer or business expert that comes across like a meathead, annoying around the staff, and, well, sort of an idiot. We have a lot of scenes that shoot for the comedy focus around Troy, of him fitting in around theater kids and theater teachers, and he just never really fits in. The movie tries to make a lot of funny situations around this, and it's about a 50-50 success rate. There are some funny moments, but a lot of it does feel a little forced. And after we get through the humorous introductions, this is where the movie goes into generic territory and doesn't really keep to the charm or humor from the first half. This is where we start to have some characters just placed in just to get this movie towards a place it wants to go. And as it does that, it trades off its charm, heart, and humor that it earned from the first half. The material seems so generic to the point that even the cast doesn't know how to improvise it. Now, the second half isn't terrible, but merely disappointing, because I felt it was crescendoing towards something really, really special. The film was directed by one of our main characters, Molly Gordon, and Ben Platt music video director Nick Lieberman, who also wrote the film alongside original short director and cast member Noah Galvin. Now it's clear that these filmmakers are really trying to stretch this story into something to reach the 90-minute mark. And in fairness, even though it seems they're really reaching to get us there, the film really is not boring. The film really is engaging, and that's thanks to the terrific cast and how it wins us over in the first half of the film. And there are a lot of elements here that really do work, and there are truly funny moments. And you can tell that directors Gordon and Lieberman really forte these moments with cleverly placed camera shots to complement the comedic timing, along with utilizing the basics of comedy with subtlety and the reactions from the spoken lines. Gordon and Lieberman truly understand the importance of reaction when it comes to landing a joke, and uses the camera to really invite the audience in on the joke. And when it comes to the humor surrounding these kids' talent and just the overall messaging of theater camp, it is treated with respect to the players on screen that they're trying to portray. What I really did respect is the fact that while being funny, it doesn't treat these kids and its cast that represent those that are learning the arts as actual props to poke fun at, but rather laugh along with, to include the relatability, not the retaliation of the love of the arts. You can see a respect to the arts, you can see respect to the cast and characters and the players on screen. These are kids learning a new skill and talent, and they're bringing the audience in on the joke to really emphasize the inclusion factor. It's making it so the players on screen and the audience are all laughing together. Theater Camp, for what it is a valiant effort for generating some laughs and some okay characters that are extremely likable on screen. But there are so many little things that are apparently obvious that could have made this film something truly special if they were fixed. And the movie tends to lead to something I was really hoping it wouldn't. But for what it's worth, it's an entertaining little comedy that will have you smiling during its runtime. I'm giving Theater Camp a very marginal pass at 2.5 stars.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby.
Now, before we get into the rest of the show, make sure you check out my reviews on previous episodes for movies that just became available to rent, buy, or stream now. Now available, Opposites React in the new Disney Pixar animated film in Elemental, which made a splash, fired me up, and I completely dug it and got blown away, receiving 3.5 stars. It's pretty awkward and not a love story in the comedy No Hard Feelings, which actually did have some feeling to it, receiving 3 stars. Miles Morales is back and catapults across the Spider-Verse in Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, which was a visually beautiful and a swinging good time, receiving 3 stars. It ends where it all begins in Insidious: The Red Door, which should have kept its doors closed completely, receiving 1.5 stars. Be part of our world in the Disney live-action remake to The Little Mermaid, which was a poor, unfortunate soul, receiving 2 stars. And finally, discover the hero just beneath the surface in Ruby Gillman, Teenage Kraken, which was a much better under-the-sea ride than The Little Mermaid, receiving 3 stars. Now, as you have heard on my show numerous times, here in the Seattle area, we just had open enrollment in our Snohomish Film Festival. I had a lot of fun helping judge all the submissions, but sadly, submission is now officially closed. I just want to say thank you to all that submitted. There has been a lot of talent submit their projects, and I have to say what an insane amount of talent we have had this year submit their films. Now, even though submission is closed, still visit the Snohomish Film Festival website at www.filmfreeway.com/Snohomish Film Festival. There you can find more information on the festival and to buy tickets for September 9th from 3 p.m. to 10 p.m. Do not wait to the last minute. I will see you there. Now, before we jump right back into some reviews, there is a podcast that I listen to that always piques my interest about murder cases, but at the same time gives me a sweet tooth. Join Karen and Ann as they bake and discuss murder cases in the Sugar Coated Murders podcast. And don't forget to check out their amazing book, Click, 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 now available to buy. But let's hear from Karen and Ann now.
Hey, Ann Varner. Hey, Karen Beatty. We need a promo. You know, like where we talk about what we do on our podcast.
On our Sugar Coated Murder podcast? Like how we love to bake and talk about murder?
That's what we need to talk about.
There you go.
I think we've talked about it. Y'all find us on all your favorite listening apps.
Stay sweet.
And don't murder.
Because if you kill people,
we will talk about you.
After being forced to drive a mysterious passenger at gunpoint, a man finds himself at a high-stakes game of cat and mouse where it becomes clear that not everything is as it seems. Now available to rent or buy on selecting streaming platforms is Nicolas Cage in Sympathy for the Devil.
People always say, don't assume the worst.
You excited?
Yeah.
Is it a boy or girl?
We don't know. Sometimes the worst is exactly what you should assume.
So my wife is in the hospital. She's about to give birth.
Drive.
This is a family emergency.
I'm your family emergency now.
Whatever it is that you want, it's yours.
Is this the wife?
David, where are you?
I mean, are you happy? You and your wife have a happy marriage?
Stay away from my family.
That's rude. You interrupting me. Don't.
You know what I don't need tonight?
Stress. Let's just make wise decisions. Watch the speed limit.
Where are we going?
You're not listening to me. I will shoot you.
And this cop.
I told you not to speed. We should play a little game. I want you to tell me the truth. If you don't, I am gonna kill Mr. Happy Trucker and this waitress. Ready? Tick, tick.
You got me confused with someone else.
Really? I'm not who you think I am. I never even told you who I think you are, so how could you know you're not who I think you are? Tick, 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 tick. Sit back down!
It's getting good. Oh. I'm not gonna die tonight. I dressed up for this. I wanted to be 100% sex tonight, and you cut that in half. I'm now 50% sex. People tend to think the more violent the death, the higher to heaven you go. Better to rain in hell, wouldn't you agree? Pick up the phone, James. What are you, ghosting me? What are you, Dr. Ross, my psychiatrist?
Now, Nicolas Cage is such an eccentric talent that it's hard not to just find his performances engaging to experience. Now, Nicolas Cage isn't a talent for everyone, but for me, in the right role that gives Cage a little wiggle room to let him be his version of a character that he envisions, hits the spot when it comes to at least being an experience in itself. Now, the thing we have about Nicolas Cage when it comes to a viewer or audience member is that we can always tell when he's fulfilling a role to catch a payday versus a role he truly is enjoying being part of. A lot of these straight-to-streaming or VOD films we see get pumped out starring Nicolas Cage, these are the Nicolas Cage payday films. But movies in the last few years such as Mandy, Color of Space, Pig, The Unbearable Weight of a Massive Talent, Renfield, and now Sympathy for the Devil, these are the roles we can tell how bought in Nicolas Cage is to these characters and committed he is to the version of the character he wanted to portray. Now, even though I thought Nicolas Cage's performance was an entertaining one in Sympathy for the Devil, does that mean it was a great movie? Absolutely not. Sympathy for the Devil is predictable cliché full of oh-so-dumb decisions and a complete far-fetched romp, with hints of a twist that it promises its viewer that just becomes a mere meh. But I am torn at this film because it actually was pretty entertaining. But the reason I brought up Nicolas Cage in the beginning of this review is because he is the reason it is so entertaining, along with the chemistry with our driver played by Joel Kinnaman. And just so we are all on the same page here, our two main characters are merely called the passenger and the driver. The whole premise to this film is that the driver goes to a hospital where his wife is giving birth, only to have the passenger carjack him to simply ask him to drive to an unknown destination. This is where the film attempts a dialogue-driven thriller, with Smarter Than It Thinks dialogue, which was written by new screenwriter Luke Paradise, and the dialogue in no way feels like Paradise. But the chemistry between driver and passenger is quite engaging to keep this movie afloat. At times, it does succeed at attempting to connect to its viewers to create a villain that we have a hard time disliking. It's almost like watching on-screen filmmaking Stockholmer Syndrome, if you will, where the kidnapper and the kidnappee have such a good chemistry, and the kidnapper shows signs of being a human that you really don't want to dislike him because he shows an ounce of decency or empathy. Now, when filmmakers or films try to attempt this strategy, it makes the climax an even more of a challenge for how the audience will feel about the ending. It's a very risky move for a screenwriter, and it heightens the stakes even more so for the director to ensure he has the on-screen vision of how he wants to execute this emotion for success. Now, of course, this is a spoiler-free review, and I will leave it at just that, without stating if it was successful or not. But I will say that the attempt at building a twist was not successful, and even more so, the payoff isn't successful. Which, as the movie goes on and we start to see a lot of the flaws in the dialogue and the ridiculous situations, as a viewer, I kept thinking there is no way this film was going to come to an intelligent climax. Now, that would have been a twist in itself if we had something intelligent happen at the end. Now, that would have made my mouth drop. But I do have to say that director Yuval Adler, who is very green to the director's seat, does have some pretty engaging shots in this film. Now, for being primarily in the car, this is where character placement and camera placement is important, especially if we're spending a majority of the movie in a car. And at times we can visually see Adler's almost lack of confidence, where the camera doesn't know where it wants to go. There seems to be no clear vision on what this movie really wants to be or how it wants to look, but at times it can come across with some really good moments of coolness and style. Sympathy for the Devil tries way too hard to be smarter than it is, but it really has a spell that really sucks you in. It reminded me of watching the TV show Frasier, where it has a lot of big smart words to say, but by the end of the 30 minutes, it's still just a silly sitcom, but an entertaining one. The chemistry is good, the Nick Cage performance is fun, and it has a hint of stylish coolness, but to truly enjoy this movie, you need to turn off your brain and sure you're a few beers in, or a few shots in, or halfway down a bottle of wine. I'm giving Sympathy for the Devil 2.5 stars. A struggling California filmmaker contemplates his romantic future. When his girlfriend moves to New York for an internship, he makes discoveries that he may not be quite ready for in the new comedy drama Shortcomings.
I was practically the only non-white person in my entire high school.
And you never felt discriminated against?
I definitely did, but not because I was Asian.
Because of your inherent bad personality.
Exactly.
Do you remember that internship that I applied for?
What about it?
It's in New York.
New York is overrated. It's so gentrified now.
How many times have you even been there?
Are we counting layovers? You always assume the worst about me, and then you end up acting crazy over nothing.
I'm not acting crazy, so stop using that word.
You're just proving my point.
Are you two, broken up?
We're taking some time off. While the cat's away, the
mouse will play with himself, probably.
Can I kiss you?
Ben.
Sorry, I'm a little out of practice.
It's clear. I'm gonna go to New York. Listen, maybe you could come with me.
I thought you came out here to clear your head.
I did. And then I met Meredith, and I've been there ever since. So when are you gonna see her?
I'm here to see Miko. She's an intern here. Actually, I'm the only intern here.
You have problems with anger, depression, your weird self-hatred.
You could benefit from a little self-hatred. Interesting.
I know you're gonna want to blame this on society or on your race or whatever, but this really is just about you.
Is this your rock bottom?
What is she doing with that guy?
They're being adorable.
So, we finally get to meet your mysterious boyfriend.
Hello, Ben. Hi. Praise Jesus. Maybe just be honest with him.
Is anyone sitting here?
No.
Shortcomings premiered at Sundance and is based on the graphic novel by Adrian Tomine. This is also the introduction to first-time director Randall Park that many will know from the TV show Fresh Off the Boat and the Marvel Ant-Man films. Randall Park is destined to be one of those talents if he hasn't earned the title by now of one of those guys that you see on screen and you just want to say, oh, that guy. Now with Shortcomings, Randall Park here creates a specific vision to an adaptation that can be extremely flawed when it comes to balance in some of the performances, especially showing performance inconsistencies of our main character Ben, played by Netflix's Umbrella's Academy's Justin H. Min. And Min at times seems to really try and nail the proper tone for each scene, but at times can come across unbalanced where he either nails it completely or just flatlines. There is little in between in his performance. The film follows Justin H. Min as Ben, who manages a movie theater, along with his 3 employees, Scott Seiss, who plays Lamont, who many will know from his social media videos, and more recently, Cocaine Bear. Now, when I reviewed Cocaine Bear, I said Scott Seiss was one to keep an eye on in the coming years. And even though in this movie he has a small role, but again, he is one to keep an eye on. He does a fantastic job. We also have Jacob Batalon, who played Peter Parker's best friend Ned in the recent Spider-Man's film as Jean. And finally, we have a fairly newcomer, Tavi Gevinson, as Autumn. And this supporting cast have some of the best and funniest moments of the film. But I'll get into that in just a second here. Now, Ben shares a mental and emotionally distant relationship with his girlfriend Miko, played by Ali Maki, where he lives a life focusing on mere self-pity of the life he lives, and a crescendo of deep flaws he addresses by blaming everybody else and uses cultural society as a scapegoat for everything bad that happens to him. Now, outside of his relationship, he does have his best friend Alice, played by Sherry Cola, who played in the more recent movie Joyride, and also suffers from conflicts and commitment issues that Ben finds comfort in for the mere fact she validates and engages in negativity of his persona and makes it relatable. Now, the film adaptation was written by original source material author Adrian Tomine, who treats the adaptation so close to the feel of turning the pages of a comic book. And at times this could be a strength or a weakness, because it can feel segmented in parts or too straightforward, where it feels like the film could have used more insertion or even more depth. Adrian Tomine shoots for an interesting character study, and at times it does work, and it does pique our interest, but the follow-through on what Tomine wants to prove is clunked into the second half of the movie. Then we have other times where it seems like it was aiming for an important point on its commentary, then it shies away from really letting the words shine on screen. But where we really do see a good balance is with Randall Park's direction. And I have to say, what Randall Park does with his direction is actually pretty smart given the material he's working with. But again, even though at times flawed, you can tell he really understands the adaptation that Tomine wanted to do. He respects the material and uses some great framing shots to really capture the environment around the characters, but still be intimate with the cast. It's a truly engaging style of storytelling, and he makes it easy to follow the emotions of the characters even when they are not speaking. Some of the best scenes of the movie is where we see Ben at work in his movie theater, where we see him merely just sitting down and watching security cameras. As a film lover like Ben, surrounded around coworkers that enjoy movies, this is a great example of the low point of emptiness we see from Ben. And to an extent, Park and Tomine execute this example spot on. These scenes are so good, especially when Ben interacts with his coworkers Autumn, Jean, and Lamont, who besides his friends Alice add a hilarious comedic relief, especially the chemistry between Jean and Lamont, who even snuck in and landed a brilliantly placed Spider-Man joke to generate some laughs. But director Randall Park would have been wise to spend more time here to fully have the viewer understand more depth to the Ben character, to really prepare us for the second half of the movie, and even more so, build more chemistry to the rest of the cast. But here's what I really truly loved about Shortcomings. At times we think it's going to lean towards a complete rom-com territory formula, teases this at times to the audience, but it never ever goes this route, but still manages at the same time to feel intimate and truly tap into some relatable feelings, even though it doesn't really try and tug at the inner romantic of the viewer, but rather a darker emotion of helplessness, lack of understanding of an individual, and reliance on a person versus happiness. Shortcomings also balances the humor versus emotion versus thought extremely well, to not become overly preachy, but rather there to entertain. When it wants to be funny, guess what? It's funny. When it wants to be uncomfortable and awkward, it really is uncomfortable and awkward. And when it really wants to focus on the character's emotion, it tells the audience when it's time to take a look at these characters specifically. The movie guides the audience on what we should be feeling and what we should be focusing on. It's a very brilliant style by Randall Park. And one of the biggest surprises and one of the biggest accomplishments that this movie manages to pull off is that even though it covers dark topics, it still manages to be one of the most entertaining dialogue-driven movies this year. And again, the dialogue is flawed at times, but Park understands this and understands the parts where it is. And for a first-time director, this is where we see an impressive skill from him. He blends the scenes that are flawed with smart camera decisions to really make that scene mesh together well. And does it always work? No. Sometimes it is flawed completely, and sometimes he knocks it out of the ballpark. We do have some earlier scenes of some performances that are emotionally over the top or underwhelming, but the mere fact I couldn't stop smiling even when seeing these flaws is a sign the filmmakers did something right. I didn't mind these flaws because I was actually having a good time. I just wish we would have gotten another 30 minutes in the first half to really explore the Ben character a little more to really appreciate the second half of the movie even more. Shortcomings is a small little film but delivers some big feelings and thoughts. Is it a great character study that the filmmakers intended this to be? No, they are flawed in their execution of being a proper character study movie, but what it does do is put a smile on the viewer's face and makes you have a good time with a perfect balance of humor, thought, and pure likability. I'm giving Shortcomings 3 stars. And that's a cut on this week's edition of The Movie Wire. I want to thank you for listening and thank you for your support. You can also show support by following me on Instagram, Twitter, and Letterboxd at Movie Wire Show. And don't forget to leave me a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Until next week, do me a favor. Make sure you stay for after the credits to show the respect to those that put their blood, sweat, and tears into making a feature film and support your local movie theaters.
A verdict has been made on this episode of The Movie Wire by your host, Justin Henson. He thanks you for listening to the show. You can follow Justin on Instagram and Twitter at Movie Wire Show or visit his website, www.themoviewire.com. Oh, and don't forget to leave a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. I'm sure he'd love to hear from you. Until next time, we will see you at the movies.
Thank you for bringing me to the movies.